Well, hey, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning for those that are down under, or good evening for those in Europe and other places. Welcome to another VA Classroom event for the month of October. It's great to have you with us. And if you've joined us today, you're probably interested in improving your writing skills to some degree, or you want to totally overhaul your writing skills. Well, let me tell you, you have come to the right place, and I'm so excited to introduce our guest here in a moment. But just a couple housekeeping items. If you haven't used GoToWebinar before, the best way to communicate with us is using the questions feature within your control panel. Go ahead and post a question, post your comments there, and we'll have a Q&A at the end of our time today. So the title of our webinar is Top 10 Techniques for Business Writing That Rocks, I should say, not walks, rocks. We're real glad to have you with us. And so without further ado, I want to introduce you to a really well-known writer coach named Linda McDaniel. And Linda and I have got to know each other over the last little while, and she is the founder and director of the Association for Creative Business Writing. And she brings more than 25 years of writing, teaching, and learning to all that she does. She's got an award-winning book that she's written called Words at Work, Powerful Business Writing to Deliver Increased Sales, Improve Results, and even a promotion or two. And she took top honors for that book at the National Best Book Awards. She's written over 1,000 feature articles for major publications, including the Atlanta Journal, Charlotte Observer, Seattle Post Intelligencer, BeliefNet, and the Washington Post. And she's done a lot of writing for a lot of corporate clients such as Wells Fargo Bank, City of Seattle, YMCA, T-Mobile, KeyBank, the list goes on. So she has had an illustrious career as a journalist, and now she's a really talented writer coach, and I'm so glad that she joined us for our time today. So welcome, Linda.
Well, thanks so much, Craig, and hello, everyone. I'm excited about today's webinar because writing more effectively and persuasively will make you stand out. And you know, that's why I teach, not to tell you a bunch of rules that you need to follow, but to help you improve your writing and in the process take your business and your clients' businesses to the next level. That's what gets me revved up and why I've chosen these favorite tips to share today. And let's get to the next slide here. Today, when you complete this webinar, you'll be able to do all of these things here. And we'll go into each of these in detail so that you'll know how to take that away and start doing it this afternoon, or for those of you in other locations, at least by tomorrow. Okay, and so now here is our agenda. I mean, this is your sneak peek at the top 10 techniques. And like I say, we'll go into detail on each of these during the webinar. But before we get to them, I just want to have a little bit of a backstory here about how today our writing is often the only way people know us. And I want them to know you as the sharp professional you are. Words are our wardrobe at work. Now think about that. How many people do you write to who you've never met? They know you only by your writing and your words. And today we're going to make sure they get the best impression of you. And about 7 years ago, when I began teaching writing, I was surprised by how many students told me without a trace of guilt that they deleted anything that didn't grab them or they didn't like the looks of. Well, now, like it or not, that's how people view our writing and us. And this quote reminds me of a Fortune 100 client of mine who told me she put out a request for proposal, and one of them, which was actually a very good idea, was so poorly written, she decided she didn't want to work with that person. It wasn't his idea, it was his writing, which to her represented what he'd be like to work with. She formed a bad impression of him from his writing, even though he had one of the best ideas. And just one more quote. The right words do matter so much. Today people are slapping together words, and you know what? That just doesn't work. I know it's the easy way. It's the way to get it off your to-do list. You've got a lot to do. But like David Ogilvy, whose life I'm pretty sure is the inspiration for the hit TV show Mad Men, I think he got it right when he said you can't bore people, and in his case, into buying your product, or in our case, as I like to paraphrase, you can't bore people into reading your blog, your book, your email, your article, anything and everything you write at work. So to get started, I'd like you to share your thoughts in a quick poll. And I think Craig's going to handle that for us. So what I want you to do is just tell me, choose one of these items that you think is the #1 reason for not starting a writing project.
Okay, Linda, I'm just bringing this up right now.
Okay.
Okay, so here we're launching the #1 reason. Here's 4 options for you to consider. Go ahead and take a moment and select either A, B, C, or D. I probably should have put E for other because some of you may not fall into one of those categories neatly, but go ahead and do your best. Go ahead and fill those out.
Well, and just to clarify, this isn't just a personal thing. This is like, what do you think when they did this kind of a survey, the #1 reason came up? And it's sort of like one of those things where it's kind of nice to know that you're not alone in your thinking, that this is really an issue for a lot of people.
Okay, so the poll's just finishing out. We're at about 75% that have voted. Just one second here. Okay, so just so far, 51% have selected B, fear of writing. 22% is due to A, overwork. Another 22% is the lack of planning, and 4% for missing material. So fear of writing is going up. We're up to 53%. So it looks like more than half would have selected B there, Linda. I'll go ahead and close that poll.
And here's the good news. There's not a right or wrong answer, really, because all of these things, overwork, fear, lack of planning, they all contribute to our not getting started and all. But yes, fear of writing is the #1. And you know, there's a lot of reasons for that. And I was sort of surprised when I first saw that. But then I thought back earlier in my career, I had a lot of fear of writing. And I think it's because it's really quite a personal act. We're putting our thoughts on paper. We may not feel prepared with all of the skills and grammar that go into that. But also, like I say, putting our thoughts down there. And that's very revealing. So there's lots of fear of writing. And so let's get started with our tips now. And I want to show you so now the slides are, yeah, good. I want to share with you the #1 is believe in yourself. And I know that sounds kind of glib, but for example, do you ever freeze when you start to write a new project for all those reasons I just mentioned? It's personal. You're putting your thoughts down and all. Well, like I said, I sure did early in my career. And here's some tips to help you believe in yourself, because now that you know a lot of your peers and a lot of other people have a fear of writing, now you're in good company. And I just want you to know that just about everyone experiences this. And as I said, we're having to put ourselves down on paper or screen. And I just want you to know that you don't have to be an English major, and I'm self-taught, and I went on to have a really good writing career. So you don't have to do all that, but you can learn how. If you have an issue with some aspect of writing, just learn about it, but you didn't have to major in it, or you don't have to have a big credential after your name. And really, when you think about that, good writing is really good editing, and we're going to talk about this later in the webinar, then you know, hey, I can at least get started, and then I can make it better and better. Or as I like to say, bad writers just stop too soon. And what I mean by that is bad writers should have edited 1 or 2 more times and they wouldn't be bad writers. So all you have to do is get started and then make it better and better. And don't judge yourself by your first draft. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too. So the tip #2 is respect your readers. And this is so important because, you know, we're not really writing for our sake. we're writing for the reader's sake. And sometimes it's easy to convince ourselves that it's okay to just dash something off, just to, like I said earlier, get it off your to-do list. But stop yourself, because you're writing to your readers. So give them the respect they deserve by avoiding the biggest writing mistake. And here it is. That's writing at your readers. It's so easy to just dump information on them just to get the job done, or maybe because we understand the information so well, we write at them inadvertently. We think our writing is so clear, but it's not necessarily clear to our readers. So we have to step back, go back to beginner's mind, and make sure we're writing to our readers at their level. Grab their attention and explain the benefits to them of what you're writing about, how it can provide answers to their problems, how it can answer what's in it for me, because I guarantee you, just like those students of mine who just deleted things they didn't like the looks of, they were saying, what's in it for me? And they didn't see any benefit, so they deleted it. And so taking just a quick look at this example, this is writing at your readers. This one, it's written from the writer's level of understanding. It's just not compelling at all. And so try to avoid stuffy language like this, like one, using one instead of you, and numerous problems. And it just sounds so unappealing. And so this is how I would rewrite this, because I want to engage my readers. I want to write to them. We found that when you follow the options, your participants will understand, because you've shown them the best way. They will naturally follow the steps instead of this stuffy thing about parties involved, won't, all that kind of thing. This is just conversational. It's writing to them. It's engaging them, and just writing very conversationally. So this just makes me feel so much better than that first example. Now, you've got to grab your readers. And so three of the ways that I'm going to show you today, there's lots of ways to grab your readers, but three of the ways to do that is one of the most obvious ones, because we all send out so much email now, is that we want to engage them with a subject line that makes them want to open our email. It doesn't matter how good it is on the inside if they just look at the subject line and think, oh, that's kind of boring. What's the point in that? Now let me share with you some ways you can write bold subject lines. You can get clever and write something catchy, although you don't have to. You don't have to be catchy. You can just mention you. You can build a little suspense, like, what if you can't ... or some kind of thing that you finish once they open the email. Alliteration is that wonderful lyrical sound when the initial consonants are the same, like create catchy content. Alliteration, if you look at the newspapers, they use alliteration all the time. And subject lines are really not very different from headlines. So look at the newspaper, look at magazines, and see how they write their headlines, and do similar things like that. Alliteration has been proven to catch people's interest and actually make something more memorable. And then, of course, keywords, whether they're the search engine optimization kind of keywords or just keywords in your industry. Use them in your subject line, then repeat them in the first paragraph. Here's kind of a funny story about the first one. The ones in red are really boring subject lines, and a client gave me these and said, why didn't people open these? Well, what's in it for me? Nothing. And a little short story about carpet repair today, they sent that out because they were asking everybody to leave the office at 3:30 so that they could have the installation of new carpet. Well, everybody deleted carpet repair today, and so I suggested to the client, um, when she told me that they had come in at 3:30 and everyone was still at his desk. And she said, "Didn't you read the email?" And everybody kind of sheepishly looked down. No, it was all about early closing today. That's what their subject line should be. Not carpet repair today. What's in it for me? Nothing. Early closing today. What's in it for me? A very good message. Same with for your information. Nobody opened that one. And it was about their vacation schedule for the year. So do you see what I'm getting at is make sure there's a benefit or something compelling to the reader in the subject line. That's how you grab their attention. Now, headlines, I've already mentioned they're very similar to subject lines. And what I urge you to do, and this is really a fun exercise, is go to a bookstore and look through all those headlines that are on the cover of magazines. Those magazines and editors and publishers have spent thousands of dollars on market research to find out what grabs people's attention. And so then you can apply these to headlines in your articles and blogs or in your subject lines because they're really very similar. So these are some of the top headline starters that this market research has told editors to use. How to, why, ask a question, statements, controversial statements, numbers. I know you've seen that one. 7 ways to lose weight, 8 tips on how to write well, that kind of thing. So here's a great checklist for you and an inspiration, 6 ways that you can start better headlines and better subject lines. So that'll get you started on that. And then the third way to grab your readers is to write exciting leads. And by leads, I mean that all important first paragraph where you want to get to the point quickly. And you want to hook your readers. And this is so important. You can hook them with questions, provocative questions, or you can bring up pain points that you know your readers experience and let them know you have the solutions. You can hook your readers with great benefits. Again, I can't stress enough, what's in it for me? But now, my favorite hook is what I call what if. And it's right there by the hook on the screen. And you can create anything. You can create a fantastic what if or a very logical what if. It's up to you. And for starters, how about a scenario that's extraordinary or but yet still believable? And I'll give you an example. My bird store owner sends out a wonderful quarterly newsletter, and in a recent issue, she started her essay with the premise, "What if turkey vultures could talk?" Now, she didn't write that, but that was her premise. She just personally decided she'd allow turkey vultures to talk. And she had me from hello. The essay was fresh and engaging, and I learned a lot of things. I mean, things I thought I had no interest in, but were fascinating about turkey vulture feces and regurgitation. I hung on every word. And look how memorable that was. I'm still talking about it now. And so this is a great takeaway, is think about what if our company doesn't do something? Or what if you did do something? Or whatever a what if. Let yourself have some fun with this. And I go into a lot more detail about how to write hooks for your readers in articles, blogs, proposals, whatever you're writing in my writing specialist training program that we're going to tell you a little bit more about. And so now the next tip number 4, is write fast first drafts. And this is maybe the best news I can give you, that 99% of us write awful first drafts. Every now and then somebody will write a great first draft, but most of us don't. And so, I really struggled with this early in my career. It was kind of my dirty little secret. I thought if I wrote bad first drafts, I was a bad writer. And then I read a great book, and it's called Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. And all those years of agonizing over my embarrassingly bad first drafts, and in an instant, I was cured. And again, what I learned from Anne is that writers I love to read write terrible first drafts. They just edit. And like I say, we'll get into that later. They take that terrible first draft, edit it, and make it better and better. So Anne gave me permission to let myself go. Now I let the words come any way they want, which is a real boost to creativity because fresh things come out as I'm writing faster. It also saves time to just get your first draft down. Don't worry about making it a good first draft while you're writing it. Just get your thoughts down. I kind of consider it an extension of the planning process. And so that was so powerful in my career. I instantly quit thinking I was a bad writer because I wrote bad first drafts. So let me be your Anne Lamott. It's okay to write dreadful first drafts. All you have to do is write and write. You can always go back 2, 5, 10 times and make it better each time. And I'm going to share with you ways to edit quickly so that that doesn't sound like such a huge task to you. So just capture that jumble of thoughts so you can wrestle with it and turn it into something great. And so then when you write a fast first draft, just let it rip. And you will, like I mentioned, you will actually write faster, which saves time for that all-important editing. And you'll add to your creativity because that's just how your brain works. While you're writing fast, more creative thoughts come to you than when you're worrying over this verb and that noun and this and that. Don't worry about that now. Separate the writing and editing process and just write. That's really all you have to do. So that'll save you time, increase your creativity, and maybe take a little bit of burden off if you're thinking there's something wrong with you if your first drafts aren't just great. Most of us don't write that way. Now, tip number 5 is just a wonderful tip that a lot of people don't know about, and it's just a lot of fun. A few years ago, I discovered something that I now call deconstruction. And the inspiration for this struck me while I was visiting an art museum. The text panel explained that Edgar Degas and Mary Cassatt applied for permits to the Louvre to copy the great masters. And you know what? I was stunned. It had never occurred to me that it was okay to copy genius. I mean, wasn't that kind of cheating? And weren't we taught in school not to do that? But then eventually I realized that deconstruction, like these artists at the Louvre, was simply an exercise, not a finished product. Degas and Cassatt developed their own unmistakable styles. They just wanted to practice technique and prime their creativity at the same time. We learn by example, by mimicking greatness until it feels natural to us. So now let me apply that to writing. First of all, this is a fabulous book on writing. It's the first one I ever read, and it's still to this day the very best one. And William Zinsser wrote, "Don't hesitate to imitate another writer. Every artist learning his craft needs some models." And so if you really love somebody's writing, it's okay to be influenced like that. And to study it. And so that's what I want to show you next is, what does deconstruction mean? You study how the article or blog, book or report, whatever you are admiring, you study how it starts, how it finishes, and everything in between. You'll learn lots of ways to keep your readers engaged. You'll find out, like, what techniques did they use to keep it from sagging in the middle. I'm sure you know what I mean. You start a novel, let's say, and gosh, by page 100, you've put it aside. It wasn't very interesting. Well, that's what I call the saggy middle. And then maybe they use really vivid verbs, or they have a great headline and subheads. And what you really need to focus on, and kind of get quiet and go within and find out, what do you love about this? Because here is an amazing thing that I want you to know is, when you love somebody else's writing, that's a voice within you that is saying this is something you aspire to, and that you can achieve if you consciously work toward that. And you wouldn't be on this webinar if you weren't interested in that. So not only can you learn from other writers by studying what they wrote and what you love about it, but you can learn about yourself. You can learn that you aspire to something like that, and honor that, and then act on it. And you'll discover why you love some writing, and then you can start to recreate those techniques, that style, some of their verbiage, the kinds of anecdotes they tell, the kind of leads, those introductory paragraphs, those things that you can start to absorb. That, just like William Zinsser said, you can start by mimicking, and then it becomes your own unique style. And by the way, you can also deconstruct things you don't like. If you read an article that you think is really poor, take a little time and ask yourself, why is this poor? And you'll learn so much about what you don't aspire to write. And so I really encourage you to take time and pay attention to writing you love, deconstruct it, and think about how you want to write like that and aspire to write like that. So now we're moving on to tip number 6, and that's tell stories. And stories today are such a hot topic, and it's no wonder, because we're all suffering from TMI, too much information. I think one of the main reasons stories are enjoying a renaissance is we're overloaded with information, and we're wired for stories. Ever since Zog and Grog sat around the first campfire eons ago, we've been telling stories. From troubadours to griots, we've captured our history through stories. In fact, it's only recently we've even written our stories and thoughts, let alone tweeted them. And here's another interesting thing. Science has taught us so much about that stories activate our brains. Through MRI tests, they show that our brains light up in ways far more creatively when we hear stories. The same information presented in a paragraph lecture form just doesn't do that, but stories make our synapses snap. And another benefit of stories is that they make messages more memorable. So if you're trying to convey an idea, you use a story, and I can show you how to develop a story inventory, and so that you've got stories at your fingertips to use when you're writing and even when you're speaking. And so they make your message more memorable. Stories help make the unfamiliar familiar. And that's when people get engaged, because that's when stories tap into our emotions. And emotions are exactly where we buy and buy in. So stories make our messages stick. They tap into something that's our buying center. And again, I mean buying into an idea or actually buying a product. And so stories grab our attention and take us out of our critical left brain. When we hear a story, we're no longer on the sideline listening or looking in. We're there with you in the story you're telling. So stories make us participants in what you're writing about. And plus, they're just fun. And so, it's really great to just come up with some stories that will tell what you're trying to express in writing. It will tell it so much faster, so much better, and so much more memorably. Alrighty. So then, tip number 7, and this involves brainstorming. And what I want to do is explore that marvelous brain of yours where I promise you all sorts of buried treasure is waiting for you. And Genius Generator is my favorite brainstorming technique. I've got other techniques to share, but for today, I'm going to show you how to tap into ideas tucked away in the recesses of your brain. And what I want you to do is think of your brain like a Google search engine, because it does have portions of the brain are just like a search engine. And as you quiet that ornery editor I mentioned, and that's what I call mine, the voice again that's telling you to get busy or that something you've written isn't good enough and all that. Well, the brainstorming technique quiets that voice, and that helps your brain search engine explore and find associations you just didn't even know you had. And again, that's just like Google. You type in some keywords, and my goodness, pages of associations show up. Well, your brain has a similar mechanism, and that's why brainstorming is so effective. So you've got ideas that we want to have break through. So now, to turn on your Genius Generator, it's the perfect antidote to that fear we talked about before, or the dread, or whatever's holding you back. And the nice thing is, we do it in small chunks of time. So say you've got 15 minutes till your next appointment and you don't feel like really starting like to write or whatever, but you could do a quick brainstorming technique, and they're fun. So it would be a fun way, an effective way to use little bits of time that you may have. And it helps you get rid of spaghetti head, that tangle of ideas that you have. You just don't know which one to pull out first. Or it helps you with what I call frozen synapses, when you think you don't have a clue, but you really do. You just need that search engine to find it for you. Now, I've taught this remarkably easy and effective tool to hundreds of students. And because your end goal is a written document, it even helps you get started with a very rough draft. So as you do your Genius Generator, you could come up with answers. You could come up with solutions. You might think of a great story or example you could share. And so now let me explain it to you. We don't have time today to actually do one, but I'm going to tell you everything you need to do this on your own. So first, set a timer and write without stopping for 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on the length or depth of what you're writing. I urge you to go as long as you can. But 15 minutes is about max, because your brain gets tired. So, and your hands, and even if you're typing, they get tired. As your pen moves or your fingers tap the keyboard, don't stop. This is really, really important. And don't worry about typos or the structure of your sentences or anything like that. Just don't stop. And that's the key to the success of this technique. Keep writing no matter what. It's okay to fill in with scribbles or X's or anything. Just keep your fingers moving, keep writing. So, gently you want to stay on track, but just keep going. And when you do, something magical happens. That ornery editor inside your head gets quiet with each tick of the timer. I don't know why, maybe it feels like you're not going to be, wasting a bunch of time. Hey, it's only 5 minutes. And so it gets quieter, and then it steps aside and makes room for your right brain, for your inspiration to strike. So I urge you to give that a try, because you're going to be amazed at what you discover. Like I say, there's all kinds of fabulous associations and ideas up there in your brain that you just need to connect with. Okay, so important tip number 8 is break it up. And I know this may seem obvious to some of you, but based on email and reports and articles I see, it's not obvious to a lot of people. So let's go over this. What I mean by that is keep your paragraphs short. Put in lots of white space. Use subheads. They help you with, and we're going to go into that. Organize with bullets and numbers, and keep the font and background pretty simple. So now let me show you what I mean. Oh, don't even try to read this. This is just the kind of thing that I get sometimes in the mail, in the email, and this is what those students that I told you about who confessed that they just deleted things. When they get something like this, if they even bothered to open the email, they just delete it, and I don't blame them. So now look at this. Look at what 3 simple hits of the enter key do. I mean, already, I feel like I can breathe better. This is so awful. That's so much better. But let's take it a step further. Let's say you have a little bit of white space, but still people are busy. So I want you to break it up with subheads. Now, these are like mini headlines. They relate to what's in that paragraph that's just below them. And you've seen these in magazines and newspapers. And the importance of them is not only does it break it up and make your whatever you're writing look better and more appealing, but it also attracts skimmers, because maybe somebody says, what the heck is breakfast bowl and boo? And these are just examples. You'd want them to relate to whatever you're writing, but it attracts them and makes them stop and go in and read. So they're skimmer attractors. And just one thing I did want to point out, this is just for illustration. This is actually too many subheads, but I'm just illustrating what I'm talking about. And so probably every 2 or 3 paragraphs having a subhead is plenty, maybe even 3 or 4. So, but I wanted just to show you how different that is from that. We've just improved it all along. And then, of course, bullet and numbers. Bullets just help break it up. This first one, number A here, your brain has to plow through that. And I guarantee you, if you were asking people to respond to an email, let's say, based on these 4 items, you would get an answer to 3 of them and 1 of them would be left out, which means you'd have to write another email, they'd have to respond again, and all of that. It just wastes our time. But if you use bullets, or as I prefer, numbers, and numbers are my favorite because, again, I'm kind of an amateur student of neuroscience, and I read a lot of things about neuroscience, and our brains are wired for numbers. And so in a nanosecond, our brain says, oh, there's 4 things she wants me to respond to. And so it's lodged in there. Whereas this paragraph A, my brain just sort of sees a sea of words. And so I had a situation where when I moved to California, I had to get my car insured. So the agent wrote me and said, please send me the type of car you drive and your birthday. Well, I thought to myself, that's just 2 items. I'm not going to number those. That's kind of ridiculous. So I just wrote back and said Toyota, September 2nd. And he writes back and says, great, now when's your birthday? And I just thought, okay, from now on, I'm numbering even 2 things. Because when you do, like I say, the neuroscience, the way our brains are wired, people get it. And you don't have all those stupid back and forth emails that drive us all crazy. So now I'd like for Craig to help us with another poll. And I would just like to see, the best way to complete a writing project is to write straight through without stopping. True or false?
Okay, Linda, I'm just bringing up the poll here.
Good.
Just 1 second, everyone. All right, you should all be able to see the poll. The best way to complete a writing project is to write straight through without stopping. A, true, B, false. All right, we're already up to about 50% voted. We'll just wait maybe just a couple more secs. Just one sec. All right. Looks like so far we're at, well, pretty close. We have 43% say it's true, 57% say it's false.
Well, you know, we all have our own style, and I'm not saying that there aren't times that you really do just have to get it done. But the next tip I'm going to share with you, I'm going to explain why this is false, because you're really not going to have the same clarity, the same creativity. And so, believe it or not, being a slave driver to ourselves is counterproductive. And again, I'd go into this a lot more in my training courses, but
Linda,
and
sorry.
yeah.
So what you've been telling me is in the last, so I've been in the internet space, let's see here, since 2002. So I'm about 10 years, and I've been writing, I don't know how many articles, content, sales pages, PDFs I've written, and I've always believed this to be true, that, you know, I've got to sit down and write a sales page in one night, or I'm going to procrastinate and not get it done. So yeah, anyways, I'll let you continue through thought, but that's, I definitely have, you're going to challenge me here, because I've always thought I need to sit down and write it through, which is probably maybe part of my problem too.
Oh, I don't think you have a problem. And I've seen your sales copy. And if this is how you do it, keep up. If it's working for you, keep up with whatever works. I don't have any, you know, edicts that I'm going to tell you, you absolutely have to do it my way, because you've got to find your own rhythm, your own style, and you're doing a great job. So I'm not going to correct you, but I do want to point out what can happen if you allow yourself the pleasure of taking some breaks. But again, only you know your habits and what works for you. But let me just go ahead and explain this a little more. And again, I trust that each person on this call today knows his or her own rhythm, and that's just fine. But let me just explain why I'm a big fan of tip number 9, take breaks. And you know, another way of saying that is get out of Dodge. And what do I mean by that is change things around so that you wake up your brain and creativity. Now, here's another neuroscience thing. I'm big on this. So, oh, let's see. Now, our folks, oh, let's see. I think folks haven't seen this. Let's hide that poll so that they can move on with my, yeah, there we go. So take breaks and get out of Dodge. And the brain is fundamentally a lazy piece of meat. And this is from a book, Iconoclast, A Neuroscientist Reveals How to Think Differently. And Gregory Burns explains that the brain gets lazy when it gets in a rut, like sitting at our desk all day. But it starts firing like a pinball machine when it gets out and sees something new. Now, Burns writes that we should take breaks and go somewhere new. And the more radical the change, the greater the likelihood of fresh insights. So now a change of scene can make a huge difference in your productivity. If possible, go to a cafe, a picnic table in the park, the public library, or at least a different part of your office. Take a walk. Just go somewhere new. Now, personally, I know this totally works for me. I'm walking my dog, a brilliant idea comes to me. A different idea comes to me, a fresh way of saying something. So that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes maybe I do know people say they write better at the 11th hour. I would argue about that because they don't have time to edit, which we'll get to in just a second. Talking about a little bit more about editing, but if you can just, let's say you're stumped, at the very least, if you're stumped, take a break. And another way to wake up that lazy piece of meat, your brain, is to switch it up. You may be wedded to your computer or to a legal pad and pen, but if you find yourself stuck, switch it up. Maybe sitting down with paper and pen, if you prefer a laptop most of the time, will break through a barrier. Maybe you can change your writing method and leave your desk or take your laptop to the kitchen table. Something like that can be just enough to get your brain out of a rut. So some of these things is a lot of people will make themselves start and finish within the same session, but maybe they ran into some barriers and they just went through them, which might lead to a mediocre answer to that barrier. Whereas if they would allow themselves to get up and walk the dog or something, it doesn't have to be a long time, or take early lunch. When you come back, you're going to have something fresh as you sit down. And here's another a great example that I love to share is Thomas Keller is a renowned chef here in the Napa Valley area. And he had been worrying for days back early in his career about the original recipe he had to create as he was applying for an executive chef position. This was before he had all of his French Laundry and all of those famous restaurants. So he's stumped. He doesn't know what his original recipe is going to be. Now, he could have just stayed there and come up with something kind of okay. But a friend just happened to call and say, let's go get ice cream. And while he was at Baskin Robbins enjoying an ice cream cone, enjoying his friend, enjoying a break from this awful mental activity he was suffering through, he had his eureka. Salmon mousse cornet. His ice cream cone inspired him. And this is a recipe he is still, decades later, he's still serving. So, hey, what could be better? I mean, honestly, if you'll take breaks during the day, you'll be amazed at how much more powerful your writing is. I know for some people it sounds too good to be true, but I promise you, if you practice this technique, you'll start tapping into all kinds of creative ideas and better words. And so finally, my last tip for today is sleep on it. And this is another one that'll save you lots of heartache and boost your creativity. And so here's another quote. You can tell I'm really fond of William Zinsser. And I just love this because it sums up what it's like to be a writer. Your subconscious mind is really always working, and it's working on your behalf. And so if you can, well, let me just give you, if you can rest and sleep on it, or at least take a break, you come back to it with fresh insights. And I encourage people, I know that delicious feeling of crossing something off my to-do list, but at 4:30, nobody's going to read it that evening anyway. Wait till morning if you possibly can, because typos, better ideas, things will jump off the page. And I know I've had that happen to me. And, you know, think about all those gems that have come to you when, again, like you were walking your dog or cooking dinner. You don't have to be asleep to get solutions, but it's true that a short nap can rest the brain and allow good ideas to surface. And they can come in the shower, on the treadmill, on a walk. And sometimes, we just need to tell the thinking part of our brain to quit working so hard. And I do want to just quickly, we're just about done here, I want to quickly share one more favorite story. And here again, this is an example of a story that illustrates something even better than I can do with just a lecture or something. I'm rather fond of taking naps, and it's one of the benefits of being self-employed. And a few years ago, I had written a boring paragraph about a very exciting civil rights attorney, and I knew I wasn't doing him justice. And I ended up with this before. Robinson has amassed an impressive array of awards or whatever. list of awards. And this was so lame. And I knew he deserved so much better. And I tried all kinds of different approaches, but I just couldn't come up with anything better. I gave up and took a nap. And when I awoke 15 minutes later, this phrase immediately popped into my head, and that's the second one. If awards were legal tender, Robinson could forget about billable hours. I don't know where that came from, but it came from that search engine in my brain working for me while I slept. And I even got a thumbs up from my editor at a major publication. And believe me, those of you who've written for magazines know you usually only hear what you've done wrong. And so you'll have the same thing happen with your clients and editors you're working with. And so, like I say, I don't know where this came from, but it just, it's that search engine. It's working on my behalf, like William Zinsser says, and it allowed me to rest my brain so that more creativity could come up. So be sure to keep paper or recorder handy and use them. These gems are ephemeral. And so I want you to capture these precious gifts that your search engine is finding for you. So I've really enjoyed sharing these top 10 favorite tips of mine, and I hope you've got some valuable new information that you can start using today. And so, you know, I just hope that you will start believing in yourself, because you're probably not experiencing anything different from what I experience as I write. And give extra time to respecting and grabbing the attention of your readers, because that's why we write. We don't write for ourselves, we write for our readers. And then write those fast first drafts to save time, encourage creativity, so you've got time to edit. And then take a look, deconstruct those things that you love and save them in a swipe file and keep them so that you can review them on those days that you need some inspiration. And of course, stories, they're just wonderful additions to any kind of writing. And then find a brainstorming technique that you enjoy. There's a whole lot of them. And find one that works for you. And then, like I say, take breaks, get out of Dodge, sleep on it, all those things. I hope you'll practice these things and make your writing even more fun to write, fun to read, more creative, and even most importantly, getting better results. So I'll welcome your questions in just a few moments, but for now I'd like to turn this webinar over to Craig.
Well, hey everyone. First of all, thanks, Linda. This was excellent. Great tips, and I like what Debbie said. She says, "I knew it. Ice cream fixes everything." And we want to take this a little further. I'm so pleased to be able to have Linda as one of our coaches, and you know, a writer coach here at BA Classroom. And we're actually going to put on a 1-month program that's actually going to take this way deeper and help you to become the writer that you always hoped to be, so that you're able to improve the writing, so that you can just attract more clients with your content, but also potentially add a writing service. So this 4-week writing program starts on October 29th, and Linda has a proven system for writing articles, blog posts, ebooks, anything that's going to help you do it with confidence and with flair, and also develop a hot new writing service for your clients. So Linda, let me pass it over to you and tell us a bit about the 4 modules that we're going to work through.
Okay, sure thing. We've got Kickstart Your Writing for More Profits and Prestige, and we'll go into a lot more detail about you know, overcoming the fear, planning and organizing, so that your readers are with you all along the way. Because, you know, as they say in sales, a confused reader doesn't buy. And so you want to have your readers and buy or buy in, whether you're selling or selling a concept. And I'll show you 5 ways to double your writing speed, and take breaks to, we'll go into a lot more detail about taking breaks like we talked about today, and more brainstorming techniques. I have about 4 or 5 that I like to share, so that you find one that resonates with you. And then the second module on November 5th is From Boring to Brilliant, how to write attention-getting, traffic-building articles, blogs, books, whatever you write at work, even email. And that's where we really do explore this. You can't bore people into reading your writing. And so we'll get into, like Craig said, my proven method that you can use over and over to write all kinds of content, and break down the writing process into manageable pieces. I often compare the way I was taught writing. I just learned grammar and punctuation and a little bit about style, but I didn't understand the writing process. And I find almost all my students do not understand the true writing process. And to me, that's like teaching a carpenter all about hammer, nails, lumber, and not teaching him or her how to build a house that doesn't fall down. And the same, if you don't understand the writing process, you're going to have doubts and concerns and maybe not do a very good job. So I'm going to teach you the writing process and how to introduce similes, alliteration, rhythm, and rhyme to engage your readers, and empower your endings so that your readers keep reading and take the action you want them to take. Now,
hey, Linda, why don't we move?
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you. Why don't we move those slides forward so they can see the?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure thing.
Different modules.
Oh,
no problem.
Okay. Sure. There we go.
And also, that's the link. That link. You don't have to go there now, but that's the link to check out our new program that starts October 29th that we're really excited about. So go ahead, Linda.
Good. Okay, good. Oh, this is good. So then, module 3. I believe so much in success stories. In stories, that I'm going to spend a whole module on how to write them, how to find them, how to catalog them so you have them, have an inventory of stories, how to craft them so that the success story is really yours. You're going to be more successful because of this. And stories they set you apart. And I want you to know how to start stories so that you tap into emotions where the readers buy and buy in. And how to tell stories in stages. You don't have to just plunk down a whole big story. You can use it throughout your report or your article or your document of any kind. So that's how we'll spend a whole session on that. And you know what, as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be very helpful to you if you ever do oral presentations, because stories are key to speeches and PowerPoint presentations. And then the fourth one, I kept mentioning it in my tips today. Good writing is really good editing. And as I say, a lot of people don't know how to edit. And I don't want you to think, oh, that sounds boring, because we have this impression that editing is so boring. But really, this is the fun part. You've done the hard work. You got your thoughts down in that first or second draft. And now we're going for polish and pizzazz. And this is just going to engage your readers all the more, draw them in, get the results, the revenues, and the respect you deserve. So it's really fun. Don't think about editing as something boring. And we'll even talk about how you can tune into your gut. My gut, and I'll tell this story in the module, but my gut is the reason I was a successful writer. And in a nutshell, it kept making me feel uncomfortable. At first I thought my chair was too high or too low, or there was a wrinkle in my cushion. And finally I realized that my discomfort was my gut telling me, you're not done. And so now I've got this buddy that I write with that keeps me on track. And so I'll talk to you more about that. And here's a good one: when to stop editing. I get that asked a lot. Sometimes we think we have to just keep editing, and there is a point at which you can stop. So that's good news. And then we're also going to have the 2 bonus question and answer sessions, and that'll be November 8th and November 28th. And I just so look forward to that, because as you hear the modules and practice, I'll give you some what I don't want to call it homework, I call it creative challenges. As you do those things after the class, then you can bring all your questions and learn from one another. And so I'm real excited about this opportunity to work with you and hope that we get to work together.
Awesome.
So,
Well, let's flip to the last slide there, and
sure.
This is a very cool opportunity for y'all because writing is kind of like the icing on the cake for your business. Not only being able to offer the service, but being able to write great copy will have a huge, great content will have give you a huge competitive edge in your business. And we constantly get RFPs where someone is looking for someone to write some articles or some content in addition to the social media and other things. So for you to be able to have this as a foundational skill to your business is, I can't tell you the weight that I personally put on it to have VAs that work with me that can also write newsletters for us and do content. So this is hugely important. It's a foundational skill. It's still one of the most hotly outsourced services right now. So go ahead to vaclassroom.com/write. So vaclassroom.com/write. Check out when you get a chance. Check out this offer. There's going to be limited seats for this writers coaching program, the specialist program, and it begins October 29th. And I'm excited to be doing this with you, Linda. I'm great to have you as a part of our VA Classroom faculty for this exciting 4-week program.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm excited about it too because I know that VAs can increase their income, improve their business, and improve their clients' business, which will help them retain clients. And writing is just, and we're going to have fun with this. And as you and I talked about, they will be certified. This is a certificate program. They'll be certified as a writing specialist after this. So that's something they can put in their responses to RFPs.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, it's going to definitely enhance your skill sets and kind of allow you to showcase that professional development as well. So, yeah, great program. I'm so glad to have someone of Linda's caliber as a part of our faculty member. She's totally exceeded my expectations in terms of the type of trainer that we could bring on to do a course like this. So right now, we're going to kind of wind down our session. Thanks again, Linda, for the 10 tips, and we'll be sharing a recording on that and the handout so that you can, take those tips and start applying them into your writing right away. But in the meantime, definitely go to vaclassroom.com/write, check out our program, and I think you're going to really like, at the end of the 4 weeks, you will have revolutionized the way that you write content. It's going to change. It'll be a big game changer for your business. So that's, again, vaclassroom.com/write. And thanks again, Linda. And we hope to see you all in the program real soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.